Hello Spark fans and welcome back to Advancing Spark, where today I'm having a dig into more of the Delta Live Tables functionality. Specifically, I want to get into the metrics, the data quality, the expectations, and see if it lives up to our expectations. That's the main plan. So when Delta Live Tables first came out, we saw the fact that we could do expectation management. We can say, when you're loading that table, that's not allowed to be null. That has to be between this range. If that's equal to that, that should be equal to that. We can set up our expectations of the data, and then it will automatically track it and do certain things like include it but just keep an eye on it, or quarantine those rows, or fail the whole job. There's lots we can do with expectations, but we couldn't really, we had to go and dig through the log manually to see what was going on with it, and that is not good enough. So today I thought I'd have a bit of a dig about how we explore that data, how we pull it out, how we use it. There are some improvements that I've gone in to expose it for us, which annoyingly I saw after I'd written a load of stuff, which is annoying, but still. And we can go and have a look at how it all hangs together. So how do you monitor and keep an eye on data quality inside Delta Live Tables? That's what we're doing today. If it is your first time here, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Say hello down in the comments. Let me know if you are currently playing with DLT and what you've put together in terms of operational dashboards. Are you building your own? Are you hanging back and waiting to see what comes out? Are we going to see DLT suddenly go into production, become GA, and then suddenly there'll be loads of extra things? I have no idea. So I'm just kind of building my own things for now. And we'll see how it goes. All right, let's go and have a look at what we're doing. First things first, I'm going to show you the new bits. So this is something I built in a previous video. So I put together a bit of a notebook that was essentially running in a bit of a loop. It was doing some smart stuff, which is all good. So we had, in our little DLT framework, I had my landing to silver is doing some auto-loader stuff. I then got this nice generic silver table builder and a generic, a generic bronze view builder and a generic silver table builder. And it's just running a little array. It's saying, here's a list of tables. I would like you to create a little, load it from landing, put it into a bronze, bring it into silver. Do that. Make that a little bit cookie cutter and apply it to my list of tables: product address, sales order detail, customer, and sales order header. So I've got that as a little templating kind of script. I've then got my gold tables with just some logic, some arbitrary. We're doing some aggregation, some analytics. We're doing some stuff to it. So that's just running a quick SQL query across the other tables. And remember, if you're in Delta Live Tables, you can say live dot. You can refer to other Delta Live Tables inside that same pipeline, and it'll build up the dependencies for us. So we're using that kind of stuff. And again, that's previous video. Go watch that video. And I do have some expectations. So I've got a little list of my expectations. So I made a little map. So expectation 1 has color. Color's not allowed to be null. We can see in a little sample of our data, color's going to be null. So we're going to reject at least one row. And it says has products. The count of products has to be more than 0. And I think that's never going to get tracked, but I want to track it. So I've injected some real basic little expectations in there. Okay, so that's what we had previously. And now that does look different to how it used to. So we dig into here. You can see 8 minutes ago I ran this, prepared. We can go and have a look what this actually looks like inside our pipeline. So you can see all my different little couplets of bronze view, silver table. They've all been created. It's all ran successfully. Got my idea of what happened in each one of those steps. Now it used to be, we'd have to go digging around the bottom here, went and go, right, okay, I had expectations in my gold table, color analysis. Need to find the flow progress that was completed. Okay. Then dive into the JSON on there. And then down at the bottom, I'd see this, the number of output rows, and I'd see my expectations and where they met. And that's super useful that you can dig down into that data, but not that user-friendly. So the new bits, you might now be able to spot now, color analysis has got this little shield on there. Oh, so we're actually now tracking data quality against that table because I've defined some expectations. So we can now click on that. I've got a whole new extra little bit in my little blade over here that tells me about the data quality of the table I'm currently selected. So if we go on the old ones, the views, the silver tables, because I'm not using expectations, it's not done any tracking for me. Other ones where I have expectations, essentially I've enabled data quality checking. It's saying, okay, how many of my rows were actually written out? What percentage of my rows were dropped? Then I've got my expectations. You can see I've got my 2 expectations over there. As color and has products, both of them are allowing records to, regardless of whether they fail or not. I can go and look at my failures only, and I can see I had 1 failure underneath has color. You guys can just about see that awkwardly at the side. So yeah, interesting in that we've now got that in there. Annoyingly, I did a ton of querying around and interrogating the JSON behind it to go, right, how does that work? To try and pull out something that looks like that. It's great that it's now built directly in. So if you're running it, you can go and have a look at your data quality. You can see what happened last time I ran, and that's quite useful. Really, really good. However, I mean, that's just telling me the most recent run. That's not giving me a long-term history. Is my data quality improving? Is it going down? What's happened on the run that was on that day or that day? This is great as a little operation snapshot of when people have gone in and ran it, or when people have run it through a job. What does it currently look like? So it's still useful to go and understand, where's this information held? Because this information is there from when I ran it ages ago. And keep going back to the history of all the different runs I've had of this. And my cluster's turned off and then back on and then turned off and back on. So it's not held in state. It's keeping that data somewhere, which means we can query it. So how do we do that? First things first, when you are setting up your Delta table, you'll have told it somewhere to do the storage. Now, nominally that's where it's going to keep the actual Delta tables it's creating. So those various different things I've got here, my different silver tables, where I've got my silver sales product, silver sales, sales order detail, and I've got my color analysis. They're all separate Delta tables that are created and maintained by my Delta Live table. But it's not the end of the story. So if we go and have a look at that particular folder, just that DLT framework, see that AdventureWorks is in there. I've got a load of checkpoints. So they're automatically created because I'm using autoloader, because I'm telling my DLT pipeline that it is a cloud files format type. It's automatically gone and figured that out, and it's kind of keeping my checkpoints for me, which is great. Got my tables, and they're the things I expected to see, and ta-da, they are just Delta tables with their own Delta log and all the normal operational metrics you get there, which is great. And we have that system folder. Now the system folder is where we have our events, and lo and behold, it's just another Delta table. So all of the stuff we're seeing here, all of these flow progresses, all of this header completed, all that stuff, the JSON we got behind it, that whole big record of stuff is stored in a Delta table next to our data, which means we can go and query it. So that's when I started off going, okay, what's the useful thing we can do here? And I thought, okay, I'll just dive in and see what we can do. So I've got that location just in as my path. We can go and have a look. It's a Delta table, so we know we can just go and read it. I think I've changed my variable names around, and that needs to be called lake path. Sure. I'll see why in a second. We can go and do that. So that's going to that full path, and then looking for a subfolder called system, and then looking for a subfolder called events. And then it's going to go and quickly look at the Delta log, going to come back, give me a data frame with the right schema, and then we can go and start querying it. Now, while it's doing that, I'm just going to go and create or replace a temp view. Come on, autocomplete. Thank you. Well done typing. And that's going to call my DLT events. We'll go and run that. You can see the schema that we get of this thing is the same as the schema of that JSON we saw in the map. So we can have like the origin, where's it from? What's the flow ID? What's the table I'm creating? We get some messages, we get any errors that happen to have happened. Loads and loads and loads of detail all piled up inside there. So quite useful, we can go and explore it. If we then go, right, I'm going to write some SQL. I just want to do a quick select star from our DLT events. We can go and see what we get. We're expecting lots of nested columns here. So the things that we had in our structure, we're going to see a nested array of what's a struct of sequence. We're going to see our origin as a big bundle of different attributes we can pull out. Now, it's going to be a little bit weird because some of the stuff we're looking for is actually held as a string. So details is the thing that has all the useful stuff, and we'll see kind of what that means for us. So what have we got here? So we've got our sequence, all the things around, kind of a little bit of just control in the DLT side. Got the origin, some great lineage. So what region was it in? What was the name of the pipeline? What was the name of the run? All that kind of stuff. Timestamps, all that kind of thing. I guess it was running maintenance. And we can go and see all the different things that's happening on this particular table. If I scroll right down past maintenance, there we go. So I've got some flow progress. So starting, running, all those different ones that we see in there. Completed. We can see that's where the metrics would be. But that useful stuff. So what's going on in here? That's in details, and that's just a big old JSON string. There's loads of things inside there that we could try and dig into. But by default, that is just a big old string. So we can start to try and explore that a little bit more and start to try and actually understand what's going on. So firstly, I'm just going to say, well, I only want my event type to be flow progress, because they're the ones that's going to have our metrics in, our expectations, or the interesting bits and pieces. Okay, so we can see, let's just grab details for now. And we can see what's going to be inside there when we get back. All these different things. Okay, I've got lots of different stuff. Now, realistically, the ones that have got things like data quality, so that's a good example of it. So we can see at this point, so the flow is completed. We had 9 rows that went through, great. We can see how many things went through. We can see our has color and has products. So that's an example of our expectations coming out, and we can see those metrics. So our metrics are there, they are available, but they're inside this JSON string. Now, something that came out a little while ago is we could do the whole from JSON and give it a structure and pull it apart and do that. But actually, if we've got things that are just held as a JSON string, we can just dig into it automatically. So we can go details, colon, and then we can apply some layers. So flow progress. Say, just treat that as if it was a straight attribute. Bring that up to the level. There we go. We've got that. Flow progress. We can actually do, okay, we want more details than that. We want flow progress dot status. And then we should be able to go, okay, so is it started, completed, running? Right, okay. We only want the ones that completed because they're the only ones that have got those metrics against it. We can actually say, bring that out equals completed. Now this is only the information ones that's going to have the metrics, so we need it. And again, that is a massive, massive change to how we used to explore JSON. Being able to say, I want to play around with everything, but treat that as JSON, drill down a few nested levels using dot notation, and pull out particular numbers. So that number of output rows, super, super useful little bit of information. So let's go and so we can start to build out a query. We've got the name knocking around here. The name of the table that I'm trying to load is one of those ones. So we've got the flow name is in there. Lots of different things we can do. And we start to build out a bit of a query. Now I kind of went ahead and did this. So I can actually just show you the query that I've built out as a, how would we do this properly? Because what I'm thinking in my head is that events table is kind of hard to explore. You have to kind of know where things are and drill down a few levels and isolate certain bits and pieces. But you could really easily just write a little notebook like this, which says, once after my DLT, after my Delta Live table pipeline is finished running, I want you to go and just scrape that information. Go into that AdventureWorks location after my DLT. Go and read that system events table. So doing the same thing that we've just done. And then I'm creating this run history data frame just by doing exactly what we've just done. I'm using a select expression, which means I'm constructing a Python or PySpark data frame, but I'm actually giving it a select statement as a variety of strings, which can be passed down into Spark SQL select statements. I'm saying I want the ID, I want the timestamp, because each time this runs, I'm going to see multiple runs for the same table. So I need to know, well, it was that run or that run or that run or that run. Very useful. Bringing back to the flow name. So the origin.flow name is where we're going to get the name of the table. We can go and dig into that and explore it. Digging down to the flow progress metrics, number of output rows. Again, using that little colon to say automatically treat details as a bit of JSON, dig in down a few levels. And if it has that attribute, bring it back. If it doesn't have that attribute, it'll just bring back a null. It's fine. And then we can dig in and say, well, how many rows, how many in data quality, how many records were we dropped, if we had any? And then doing that same filter that we had before, flow progress, completed, and we could do exactly that to dig in and try and understand what's going on. So rather than having that big, complex events table with loads of events that have extra information that is super useful, but not useful for data quality, not useful looking at lineage and throughput and all that kind of stuff, we're just filtering it down a little bit. We're taking a little subset of that and saying, I only care about this bit. I'm still getting lots of information back. I'm still getting loads of things in there. I'm just kind of tidying it up a little bit to make it a little bit easy for me to work with. If we just get rid of the star, let's go with a super, super simple table. and say, actually, I just want something really easy. What's the ID? What's the timestamp? What's the name of the table? Number of output rows, number of dropped records. And then I'll see different runs of it, different things. Now, what I can see is there looked like there was a change kind of a little while ago, start of the month, where it used to automatically always capture the number of output rows. Now it looks like it only does it if you've got data quality enabled. So if you've got expectations on the table, it'll capture the number of outputs. If you don't, it looks like it won't. It's kind of weird, but there's a definite difference since I've had this running, what, on the 1st to the 11th, since I've had it running, oh no, maybe it did change. I don't know. Basically, there's a bit of weird behavior in that. Sometimes it's tracking it, sometimes it's not, but it's definitely tracking it for the table that I have data quality metrics turned on, which is useful. I can dig into it and explore it. But that doesn't give us the full answer. That gives us that nice high level, what happened each run. But if I've got multiple expectations, if I've got multiple things I want to track, that doesn't really answer the question for us. So we dig into it. So we have that data quality expectation. So let me just quickly show you what that looks like with the same thing turned on. If I go, I want to include that, which I bring back expectations. We should be able to see that we can do the same thing. We can get that expectations record where we've got it set. Whoop. But it again comes down as a nested JSON string. So it's kind of like parsing a JSON string and then finding there's another JSON held as a string inside the JSON string inside the, and it does start to get a little bit funky. So what I've actually done in terms of my pulling it apart, the kind of the template that we're using, is we kind of treat it a little bit like you know, kind of multiple related tables. We've snowflaked it a little bit. Bad word right here. So we've got our master table, which is for this whole run of this table. This is how long it took. This is the number of output rows, all that stuff. And then we can actually, as a separate thing, say, I want to do a subset of that. Just give me the ID so I can join it back to that table. And then give me those expectations. And apply the same filter and all that kind of stuff. And then we're doing it the old school way. Because I want to use a from JSON. And from JSON is going to essentially take that expectation and then we'll take that kind of nested string and turn it back into something we can actually work with. I'm saying, well, here's a schema that you can apply to that expectations. And then we can use from JSON on top of that expectations field, and we can pass that same schema in. But saying this whole string, this is the structure that you can apply to it. By the way, it's going to be an array, and it's going to have extra things in there. This is how you work with it. Actually, let's just go back a little bit. Let's kind of, before we do this other stuff, let's just kind of quickly show you what that's going to look like. So if we've got the expectations DF, we can just do a quick display of that. And that's going to be just straight our expectations as it is. You can see that's what it was stored like. And let's take that, do a quick copy of that and show you what it's looked like with just the for JSON in there. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of the explode. So all this is doing is saying, just take that string, take this thing. Actually, I'm going to do struct, but it's fine. So I'm saying, actually, give us a new column, which is taking that thing and turning it into something we can actually read. So you can see where that is currently an array. We're going to see, oh, that's now something it can actually understand as an array that then has properties inside there. It's turned it into something that it can actually understand. So it's applied structure to the string column so we can actually dig in and understand it properly, which is a little bit nicer. So then what I'm actually then doing, so we undo that, and then wrapping it in an explode, and that's going to bring it up to the first level. So actually, we're only going to see where we have those expectations, and we're going to see a row per expectation. So for that one run, we've got the same ID there. So it's looking at the same record in the table above, in this table up here. We'll just have one record, which is, well, no, this is the color analysis run for that particular day. Yet now we've got two records for it because we have two expectations. We can treat them slightly separately. We've got the number of past records for has products, number of past and failed records for has color, and we can separate it out that way. Essentially, just applying a little bit of data managing, with a little dipping into the data, doing a bit of exploration and pulling that stuff out. Okay. Then what I'm next doing is then just using that same dot notation to say, well, actually just pull out our name, data set, past records and failed records, ID it up so I can treat it as a data set. There we go. So now I've exploded it out, I've sharpened it up, I've pulled everything up to a first party column. So now we can see here's my expectations table. It has color analysis, past records, failed records, all much easier to work with. So it took a little bit of digging, a little bit of like pulling things apart to be able to actually start working with this stuff. But now that's done, that's nice and easy to work with. And so the final thing that I'm doing is taking those two tables. So my flat run history and then my slightly more exploded expectations. I'm saving those down as Delta into the same folder but with an underscore audit as those two different tables. Then I'm registering them with Hive. Saying, just keep a record of these tables. I want to go be able to see it. So after all that, why at the start you might have seen I did have, rather than AdventureWorks, I've got AdventureWorks and audit. So I've automatically just made a second copy of my DLT with some audit tables that's just got my expectations and run history, but tidied up and made queryable. So every time I now run this, I'm actually just going to run it so that cluster still stays on because I've got it in development mode. Every time I run this, I can then run this whole notebook, and I've got two widgets. What's the name of the database name? So where should we save those tables once we've actually sort of created them? And what's the name of the storage? Where is the original DLT main root location so we can go into the events table and can pull that stuff out? Now by making it generic, that means I've got a little pattern. A little pattern for scraping metrics and making it available for me to go and have a play with. So if I look in data, for example, you can see I've got my AdventureWorks DW with my original tables, my AdventureWorks DW audit. I can dig in, have a look at my expectations. Probably need some better naming conventions there, but you get the idea. And we can go and actually have a look at that as we store things over time. We can go and dig into it and understand how things worked. So that's good. We can pull those together. So to get that to work properly, realistically, we want that to happen all the ways whenever we run that DLT job. So as soon as you finish going through that pipeline and you've created all those tables, you've done my silver tables, I've done my gold table, everything's created, I wanted to then take a fresh scrape of those metrics, land it into those tables so that I've got my operational stats all up to date. So I made a quick job. So this is using the nice shiny new multi-orchestration jobs. I've got one task, which is run my DLT pipeline. You can see it is a pipeline type of task, and it's running my AdventureWorks DW. That's the name of my DLT pipeline. And that's all. Doesn't need anything else. It's just run that first. All good. And then I'm going to run the notebook. I'm pointing it at that notebook that we're just having a play with. I'm passing those two parameters in there. The location, the storage location of the Delta Live table pipeline that I've just ran. And then the name of my database. That's not going to work. Database goes in there. So I can now hook that up and have that going through. And that's got a dependency on that original AdventureWorks DW. That means that I can run this whole thing, like run. And that's going to first run my whole pipeline. And we can step into it, we can see it running, and we get the live execution mode of the DLT pipeline. Then as soon as that's finished, it's going to step down and do a run of my metrics. And I can kind of stitch those things together. That actually run? Running. Oh, it should be in runs. Whoops. So we can dive into our runs. So we can see it's currently doing a run of that pipeline. We get that little thing saying this is currently executing. We can dive into it. Not say, okay, I've kicked off a thing. But that ID means we can then dig and see it currently running. So we can see it's ran those. They've got nice ticks against it. It's just finished color analysis. That's now finished. So we get that kind of live execution view of what's going on. As soon as that reports that it's finished, because our little notebook gathering our metrics depends on that first one, it's going to wait for a couple of seconds, and then we'll see that one kicking off. There we go. We can dig into that and see, just like any other notebook kicked off by a job, that's now running. It's waiting for this cluster. It's going to run through, gather all my metrics, and then tidy them up and present them ready for me to look. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of faff. It does sound like a bit of playing around to go and figure out how these things should actually work. But it just makes these things a little bit easier to work with, a little bit easier to present and go and have a play with, which I think is worth doing. I think it's worth making it quite nice. Now, in this case, I have then, as soon as that's finished, I dove over, went into Databricks SQL, and in Databricks SQL, I've then got my audit table with my expectation, my run history. I can write queries against it. I mean, honestly, my row throughput doesn't look terribly exciting because I just had consistently 9 rows every time it's ran. You can dig into the expectations and say, well, actually, what passed, what failed, what are the different expectations? I mean, it's all a little bit ropey. I've done this quite quickly, but it means I've now got this to explore. I've now got this to go in and write queries against, make a little operational dashboard, present myself. Here's a history of all the different runs. Here's all the expectations I've ever ran. Here's the results of adding this. Here's what duration has looked like over time, because all of that is stored in my events tables. Now, you know, what we might see is that all of this work is for naught, because actually they're going to plug more of this stuff in and there'll be a nice shiny button and it'll be baked in. But we can get ahead now rather than wait and see what comes out. We can certainly dig in. There's a whole wealth of information inside that events table that you can go and dig into to get some real good reporting about what is going on. So I do advise you have a bit of a dig. That's kind of very much kind of quick recap reminder there is that you have that events table. That's the main thing to know, is that wherever you've stored your Delta Live table, you've got the system folder, you've got an events Delta table, and if you go querying around that, remember your dot notation, remember that column to dig into the details of it. And then, yeah, you can do some really cool stuff to explore and monitor and manage your data quality over time. There we go. That is a little bit of random experimentation I've been doing. I've been ducking and diving around our metrics to see what we can do. And yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to go through. Just kind of give you a bit of a flavor of what's there. Just a lot of good information being tracked under the hood. You can also do the same for looking at schema over time. You can pull out the durations. You can pull out things like the cluster and the cluster size and utilization. There's so much information in there for you to go diving around. Just pull it in as a Delta table, start having a look, start having a play, and you can do a lot of stuff there. All right, I'll leave you alone. That's me for today. As always, do not forget to like and subscribe. Let me know if there's any other topics. Are you currently using Delta Live tables? Do you want to? Are there features that you want to see in there that you don't see there? Like, come on, we want to see this. Let me know down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.